Hello everyone, DarkOfAllTrades here. If there is one thing I absolutely can't stand when it comes to discussions either online or in the real reality, which some call outside of the matrix, is when someone presumes to know what I think or believe better than I do. Now, I get that there are extrapolations one could make in order to shortcut some parts of the conversation, and I have no issues with this. I use them to anticipate what questions people will have in my lessons, and I need to be prepared with answers for questions that others may not be ready for. That is just part of being a teacher. However, when someone tries to tell me what I believe, it is super insulting, especially when they're wrong. I avoid this by asking questions or steelmanning the argument. I will use something like, "If I understand you correctly, and please correct me if I am mistaken about it, are you saying..." And then I'll state their argument back to them, as I understand it. What we shouldn't do is say, "Well, you said you believe this, but you really believed in this other thing and not the thing you said you believe." There may be exceptions to this, such as when your interlocutor is not being honest, or when they use a term in a different way than what is generally accepted, and there is an established word for what they mean. The point of this is that when a person tries to tell me what I believe, it is extremely rude and a good way to shut down a conversation. I've been seeing this happen more and more on atheist shows and channels. If you think someone is doing this to you, they could be strawmanning you. Call them out on it if they are. It could also be that they are genuinely mistaken and maybe worded their idea poorly. This happens, so try not to assume dishonesty right out the gate. Remember Hanlon's razor. Never attribute to malice that which can be explained by ignorance. With that all out of the way, let's get into today's video. This one comes from a channel that's just a bit bigger than mine, though I'm catching up thanks to all of you. The channel is called Pointless Thorns. He says he was once an atheist and now Christian. I'm not sure what changed his mind, but I haven't really delved too deeply into his content. I started with this one titled, "Atheism is not a lack of belief." Right off the bat, I see some red flags. Remember that first bit about not assuming what someone believes? Yeah, I'm trying to remember that. I'm not going to go over the title unless he brings it up in the video. For now, let's just see what he's got.
Uh-oh, human.
The first scene here shows this is a response TikTok to someone's comment. The comment reads, quote, "Atheism isn't a worldview, sir. It addresses one thing, your God claim. I don't have to claim to know anything about the universe to reject your claim." This comment is correct. Anything besides the existence of a God is not covered by the term atheist. Just like the term theist doesn't tell you anything about what the person believes other than the belief that their God exists. I'm watching for generalizations here. I bet there's at least one.
Listen, I'm not going to allow you to be intellectually dishonest.
Well, the commenter isn't being intellectually dishonest. Even if by some chance the comment wasn't accurate, and atheism did actually require other claims, this person could very well still be intellectually honest. Just like if you were to say that you believe in a God, you would not be intellectually dishonest even though your God doesn't exist, right? You would be expressing your beliefs honestly, even if your beliefs are mistaken. Otherwise, you would have to purport that billions of people are intellectually dishonest every day. That does not make a good start to this conversation. It is pretty condescending if you ask me. Or is me saying that also being intellectually dishonest because you may disagree?
Atheism is, in fact, a worldview because...
No, it isn't. I mentioned this in a previous video. According to J.W. Sire, as cited in the National Library of Medicine, quote, "A worldview is a collection of attitudes, values, stories, and expectations about the world around us which inform our every thought and action," end quote. A source for this is in the description. So, by this definition, Pointless Thorns here thinks that atheism is a collection of these things, rather than the single position on a single claim. Perhaps he has mistaken the consequences that follow from that position as part of the worldview. It would logically follow that if there is no God, then there is no God intervening in people's lives. However, this isn't actually part of the worldview. This is about what is not in the worldview, rather than what is in the worldview. Anything beyond the claim about the existence of a God is not covered under atheism. Any consequences of that also do not need to be asserted. I don't need to say, "God didn't help you find your keys," simply because I don't believe your God exists. I could just say, "I don't know how you figured it out, but you did, so we can go out now." Name one thing that is covered by atheism that isn't what was put forth in the comment.
A worldview is how one views or interprets reality. It is a collection of beliefs.
See, you already get it. Atheists can hold any belief that doesn't include the existence of a God. The existence of that single thing would be a disqualifier. Should we eat bacon? Atheists all over the world disagree. Is rain a good thing? Atheists can disagree on that too. Is religion a good thing? I know atheists who disagree on that one as well. I'm concerned that the issue is that you are assuming you know what atheists think on other subjects. I hope I'm not correct on this.
And you would, in fact, need to know many things in order to make the claim that God does not exist.
This is technically true. You would need to know how to make a claim. You would need to know how to use that in an interactive way, lest you just scream out into the void. People have worldviews. Atheists have worldviews as well-rounded humans. However, simply being an atheist doesn't tell you anything about what their position is on any other positive claim not involving a god.
You're making yourself look kind of ignorant right now. If your claim is that you're not convinced that God exists, it would be because you currently believe that God does not exist.
Uh-oh, this isn't quite right. Though I really wanted to give him credit for it. What you put forth here are two separate claims that are very similar, but are not mutually exclusive. You and I have never met in person. If I tell you in real life that I'm 7 feet tall, if you're not convinced that I'm 7 feet tall, does that mean you are convinced I'm not 7 feet tall? Or are you withholding belief until you have more information? There are a myriad of examples one could use to show this. The gumball analogy is a good simple one. The courtroom analogy is another. Look those up if you want to. I usually use the claim that I have a dog. I do, and I can demonstrate that. But if someone doesn't trust me at my word, they may not believe me without some kind of evidence more than just my say-so. That doesn't mean they're convinced I don't have a dog. You're trying to say all A's are B currently without justification. Sure, some atheists also believe that God does not exist, but that is not the reason why they are not convinced that a God exists. A is required for B. Some A's are B, therefore all A's are B's, is a version of a formal logical fallacy called affirming the consequent. You cannot assume that everyone who is not convinced of Proposition A is also convinced of Proposition B. And you really cannot assume that everyone who is convinced of Proposition A is convinced because they are convinced by Proposition B. This is all over the place.
And you don't believe that God exists because you believe something else.
This is a tricky statement. On the surface, this sounds intuitive. People believe things and don't believe other things. Though it suffers from the initial issue I brought up, you are presuming to know what all atheists think. Even if it were true for most or even all atheists, your conclusion does not follow. People who never are introduced to a God concept don't not believe in a God because they believe something else. They don't believe because that concept doesn't exist for them. No other beliefs are required in that situation. You are now starting with a conclusion and working backward to try to justify a person disagreeing with your conclusion. This is not good logic. Are you convinced that Gazornenplatz exist? If you're not convinced, then does that mean you don't believe they exist because you believe something else? No, you just don't know what they are.
Listen, all worldviews seek to answer all the important questions. What is the origin to life? What is the meaning to life? Who am I? Why am I here? Why is there something rather than nothing?
No, they don't. Some worldviews don't care about these questions. Capitalism is an example of a worldview. Does capitalism have anything to say about the origin of life? Can an explanation for why there is something rather than nothing be found in capitalism? Does moral relativism say anything about why an individual human exists? Does compassion tell you anything about who you are as a person? Does determinism say anything about the meaning to life? I know that one may be arguable, but you get the point. All of these things are worldviews. None of them seek to answer all of those questions.
You have a worldview. All people do. But why does your worldview better explain life and all of creation?
It doesn't guess about life. It doesn't make things up about life. It doesn't put forth all of creation unless you are meaning reality. My worldview contains testable ideas and is open to changing when new data comes in. For what my worldview doesn't have answers for, your worldview doesn't either. Your worldview just has responses that it can't back up on those issues. To claim you know when you don't is called lying.
Listen, we're like detectives and we're both presenting our own case, but you have the burden of proof for why you believe what you believe.
Technically, this could be correct. Any statement about what exists or doesn't in reality adopts a burden of proof. Even negative claims can adopt a burden of proof. This is usually met through something like modus tollens, that is, denying the consequent. If P, then Q, not Q, therefore not P. As far as a God claim, this is how I use it. If a God exists, we would expect to see X. We don't see X, therefore that God doesn't exist. If we don't have an X to examine, then this God is indistinguishable from a God that doesn't exist. This isn't necessarily bulletproof, but it carries a lot of weight and forces the theist to redefine the properties of their God, or also, as is most common, move the goalposts. It becomes Sagan's dragon.
Just as I have the burden of proof for why I believe what I believe. And many ignorant atheists, they make the illogical mistake of saying that atheism makes no claims.
Atheism makes no claims. Oh, wait, that was a bad thing according to you? In that case, atheism makes no claims. By saying this, I adopt a burden of proof. I meet it by explaining what atheism means. It is a single position on a single claim. In this case, it is the not accepting of the claim some number of gods exist. By your statement, you adopt a burden of proof. To meet it, you would need to put forth a claim that atheism makes that we would both accept it makes. Super easy, right? Just put forth your claim and we can examine it. Of course, you can't, because not accepting a claim does not mean you accept another claim. I already went over that.
But atheism makes no claims is itself a claim that would need to be defended.
Fortunately, atheism doesn't make the claim, atheism makes no claims. The atheist who puts that claim forward, as I mentioned before, adopts the burden of proof. Back to my example from before. If you don't believe the claim, Professor Dark is 7 feet tall, you don't adopt a burden of proof, nor does you not accepting a claim say what you do believe. The rejection of a claim is not the same as affirming the counterclaim. I feel like I say that too often. I should make a sticker out of that.
But it can't be defended because it's a claim. It's self-refuting.
What? I had to go back and watch this again to make sure I heard you right. So let's watch it again.
But it can't be defended because it's a claim. It's self-refuting.
Let me break down what you said by putting it into a syllogism. 1. Atheism makes no claims is a claim. 2. This claim is made by atheism. 3. Therefore, atheism makes a claim. I accept premise 1, as I've already mentioned. I don't accept premise 2 because atheism is not making the claim. An atheist is. As stated before and for the last time in this video, atheism is not accepting the claim of theism. That's it. End of list. Finito. Terminus. Nothing more. You are trying to put a burden of proof on atheism, and to do so you have to equate not accepting X claim with accepting X's counterclaim. This is not how it works.
And if you claim that atheism makes no claims, well then you claim ignorance, and so you might as well be a blank canvas.
If you don't know one specific thing, then you might as well not know anything at all? That is just absurd. If you don't know I'm 7 feet tall, then you might as well be a blank canvas. What kind of argument is this?
And if that's the case, well then I'll paint a picture on you. Whoop, there.
See, kids? This is called indoctrination.
Look at that. That's you making claims. Atheists make claims whether you like it or not.
Atheism doesn't make claims whether you like it or not. Convinced?
Because every proposition that affirms something denies something else by logical implication.
I have to say, you are correct on this statement itself. If you accept one of two propositions, you must deny the counterclaim, as there is a law of excluded middle. Something is either X or not X. If you accept it is X, you are denying that it is not X.
Because truth is absolute and exclusive. Your belief that God does not exist is within your worldview, which is a collection of beliefs.
And there you've given the game away. Atheism is part of someone's worldview. It is not itself a worldview.
You only denied God because you affirmed something else.
Atheism doesn't necessarily deny God. Not saying that one again.
So what is that something else that you believe?
I believe that I have no need for the God pseudo-hypothesis. I believe your claims of a God existing has not met its burden of proof. I believe that every time someone put forth testable claims about the existence of a God that was exclusive to a God, those claims not only failed to rule out other options, but actually fails to meet its own burden of proof. It is as disproven as a God claim could be. For everything else that failed that hard, I would venture to guess that most people would have dropped the idea. But because this God concept is so ingrained in our culture, it's harder for people to give up. You could say that they tell their God that they are never gonna give you up. I'm not apologizing.
Because if God is true, your worldview will crumble.
Correction. If God as you define it is demonstrably true, my worldview would change quite a bit. I would definitely have to reevaluate a lot of my beliefs. A deistic God who doesn't interact with anything likely wouldn't have much of an effect. It depends on the God, and if you can demonstrate it or not. If a God exists, but I never find out, then my worldview doesn't change. We're at divine hiddenness. Check my Patreon exclusive video for that.
I know, because it happened to me when I had been an atheist.
Your experience may be very different from another atheist's. I do wonder what convinced you that a God that doesn't exist does exist. I may have to look to see if you have a video explaining that if it exists.
And finally, atheism is not a lack of belief, otherwise you wouldn't even have any beliefs.
You can't not believe that I am 7 feet tall, otherwise you wouldn't have any beliefs. Therefore, I am 7 feet tall.
But you do. I'm going to show you an example. Look, you don't merely have a lack of belief that this is red. No, you possess a belief that this is green.
Yes, and do you know why? Because we can directly observe it. If we couldn't, and you just claimed you had a red, what is that, a marker? I don't know, I can't tell. I'll just believe it's a marker until new information comes in. If I couldn't examine it, and I didn't believe it was red, does that mean that my lack of belief that it is red means that I actively believe it is not red? No. I would not be convinced it's red, nor would I be convinced that it's not red. Of course, it is one of those two, but I don't know which one, and I'm not forced to make a decision. I can just say, I don't know, and that tells you nothing about what I actually believe.
Likewise, you do not possess a mere lack of belief that God exists. Rather, you possess a belief that God doesn't exist.
Again, nope.
And your belief that God doesn't exist stems directly from your worldview, which is a collection of beliefs.
He gives the game away again. That's a twofer. The single belief stems from other beliefs in the worldview. Therefore, the single belief is not itself a worldview. Otherwise, you'd be purporting multiple worlds/realities. Things in your worldview can influence other things in your worldview, but that goes all the way back to when I brought up the difference between a belief and the consequences of that belief.
All beliefs determine unbeliefs. All unbeliefs stem directly from beliefs. So, listen, you present your case, I present my case, and then may the one that is most reasonable be believed. But don't tell me that this is not red. Tell me what it is.
And that's just it. You are now roughly equating the idea of the pen is not red to the God is not in existence. You can show me the pen. You can use it to make marks that we could trace back directly to a pen and not a pencil or a paintbrush. We have experience with other pens. We have a justified belief in that pen. We do not have the same for your God, so don't try to force a burden of proof onto atheists by trying to tell them what they believe. If you want to know what a person believes about something, just ask.
And to spend your entire life going out of your way to tell people you don't believe God exists, it's absolutely ridiculous. You look foolish.
I don't spend my whole life telling people I don't believe. I talk about it more than most as I am a teacher and a counter-apologist. You wouldn't tell someone who teaches law not to talk about crime. That is kind of what they do. Better yet, you wouldn't tell a firefighter to not talk about fire. I believe the best way to live life is by ditching beliefs that can't be reasonably demonstrated through education. If you think I look foolish because I do what I do, then you are entitled to your opinion.
You need to get busy. You need to present your case, show people why you believe what you believe. Don't be a coward. Say what it is you believe and then defend what you believe.
Unless that belief is the belief that you don't accept his claim, right? Don't talk about that, no. I'm pretty sure my entire channel is talking about what I believe and or why I don't accept what others believe. If you disagree, I am very active in my comments. Come tell me and I'll happily give more robust reasons for everything I'm saying here.
I'll do the same. Here's what I believe. Christianity is the most reasonable of all beliefs. Jesus is the truth and the only way to life. And I'll defend that. In fact, I have. My entire website is dedicated to it. Hey, did you know? As it turns out, I wrote an article on that. Oh, by the way, this is green. Just in case you keep calling it not red. It's green.
And your beliefs are wrong, as I and many others have shown. I haven't checked out your other content, and I likely will, but I don't need to know why you think 1 + 1 = sandwich to know that it isn't correct. Maybe you can convince me, but you have all your work cut out for you. If you got this much wrong here, I can only imagine the rest of your content at this time. That's all for his video, so what exactly did he say here? Atheism is a worldview. You don't believe a God exists because you believe a God doesn't exist. Beliefs have a burden of proof. Atheism makes claims, and to say it doesn't and to say it does is a claim atheism makes. If you accept a claim, you reject its negation. Atheism is part of a worldview, contradicting the first point. If God is true, your worldview will crumble. I used to be an atheist. This pen is green. Atheism is part of a worldview again. Defend what you believe. Jesus. That was a bit of a trudge, but it was easier than it looks. He started with a faulty assumption. He thought he knew what I believe better than I did, and tried to change a single lack of belief into a positive belief, thereby saddling atheists with a burden of proof, although not presenting evidence for his titular argument that atheism is not a lack of belief. All he did toward that was assert it was something it wasn't, and then, again, try to mention that there are potential implications as if that changes anything. That's it for this one. What did you think? Do you agree with Pointless's points here? Or do you think he took a stab at atheism and missed the forest for the trees? Let me know in the comments below. Special thanks go out to my patrons, Long-Haired Lefty and Jammin' Bomb, who are the claim to the theist's negation. If you are interested in truly making up my worldview, head on over to patreon.com/DarkOfAllTrades. Patreon levels start as low as $1 a month. I've reached a status where I can start monetizing my channel here on YouTube. I want to avoid putting ads in my videos because nuts to them. I don't like them, and I can't imagine many others would. Patreon is a good way to help me keep those off. Another good way to defend what you believe is to hit the like button to reinforce the belief that you like me. You really like me. You can also be part of the worldview that is my channel by hitting the subscribe button. Every bit of engagement helps. Feed that algorithm. All hail the mighty algorithm. And as always, keep learning.